What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the One Deeper podcast. This week, I speak to Dr. Danielle Elton, a physicist who later transitioned gracefully into the field of AI, medical imaging. We talk about the intricacies of AI development, the challenges in the field of AI, specifically medical imaging AI. We talk about some physics, energy generation, technology, and all the ways that human beings have been trying to improve our lives. Yeah, it was a really wide-ranging, interesting conversation. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you again next time. Dan, you know what? Still feels kind of Dr. Elton or Dan. All right. Thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I know you okay. I have a bunch of notes to talk about, but first of all, your blog is awesome. Every post is I feel like every post. I was just going through a collection of a historical posts and all that stuff. I feel like we could just spend an entire episode on just one of your posts. Be like, okay, let's talk about academic fraud, or let's talk about discovering new molecules for explosives. We could go on and on. But do you just want to say a few words about what you're up to now and what you do and where you started and just general introduction?
Okay, sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for the compliment on my blog. I'm trying to blog more now, and my goal is about one post a week. So I'm trying to learn how to get it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And the blog is supposed to be focused sort of on how to improve science and technology.
Yeah.
And but I've also written about other topics as well, like long COVID and different things. But yeah, my background is originally in physics. That was quite a while ago now, but I did a PhD in physics, which I finished in 2016. And then I had gotten kind of burned out with that. So I decided to switch into AI and machine learning, and ended up getting into AI for medical imaging. After first I did AI for molecules, and then I got into AI for medical imaging.
Yeah, we can get into this. I have a bunch of notes I want to talk to you about, medical, the hypes and all the things I want to talk about. But just for everyone to know how I sort of stumbled into your work and just to get a chance to talk to you was because so I guess the connecting point was probably David Deutsch, and I started with, of course, first reading the beginning of Infinity, and that book was at first I was either this makes no sense, or I'm just not understanding what's going on in this book. And then so it was a little hard to read, but every time with every passing page and every passing chapter I was like, oh damn, this is it was so the best thing I got from that was hope. It gave me so much hope in the sense that things can and will continue to get better if we just have the right framework and the way of approaching problems, and how we conceptualize ourselves as humans, right? What is it that we do in terms of solving problems continuously? But anyway, that's a whole other thing. Anyway, so I wrote this paper for one of my classes about. So actually, you know what? Can we take a step back and just talk about what a good explanation is?
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, that comes directly from The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch, and he says, a good explanation has reach, which means it not only accounts for like the data that you have, but it can make predictions regarding future data. So basically, it's like the ability to extrapolate. So bad explanation would be something that is just tailor fit to whatever data you have. Like the stereotypical example would be like some kind of regression fitting, or having a bunch of like heuristic rules in medicine.
Right.
Whereas a good explanation gets deeper into the fundamental
Yeah.
in my opinion, it gets into the actual reality of nature.
Right.
And
So
therefore, because it's getting into the actual reality of what's going on, it can make predictions about what can happen in the future in different situations.
exactly. So the example that I wrote about was the difference between using linear regression to predict where an asteroid will appear in the sky versus trying to understand the equations given by Kepler, let's say, for the laws of planetary motion and how how things behave. And is it correct? Am I correct in saying that essentially the David Deutsch slash Popper the philosophy is that science progresses by iteratively, like in an evolutionary fashion, going from worse explanation to better explanation to better explanation. Is that generally?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And having theories that get more and more general and more encompassing as time goes on.
Yeah. So I actually told one of my friends about this the other day. It was pretty interesting. Like, if you take about if you're like on Earth, right, and you want to know how gravity works, just on Earth, right, that's all you see, and you have Newton's explanations or Newton's laws, and if you like the predictions that Newton's laws would make, and the predictions that say Einstein's equations would make, are pretty much identical, right? Like,
Yeah. Hmm.
but underneath what it explains about the whole of the universe is very, very different. Like, the implications of the two explanations are very different.
Hmm.
So
The picture is kind
the
of like
picture is
the
different. Like
picture of
like
how
like
gravity
exactly,
operates is
exactly.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a I mean, it's such a huge shift. Like in the local scale,
Hmm.
let's say you just want to predict where a ball will fall or whatever, right? How the motion will work. In the local scale, it might be the difference between the two might be like 0.000000001 difference, right? So you're like,
Hmm.
whatever, same deal. But then you're saying, wait a minute, one predicts black holes when the other
Yeah.
is like the other wouldn't. So it's very interesting. This idea of a good explanation, which is what brought me
Hmm.
into this whole machine learning thing, right? Because
Yeah.
as we all know, uh, like the hype is pretty. Like, I want to ask you this. I mean, I've been asking people generally. Like, my intuition for the whole paper was that, like, I don't think we can learn our way to a knowledge creating machine. Like, that is
Uh-huh.
sort of my intuition. I don't know how good of this, but like that was based on the idea that, like, okay, so based on what I read and based on this, based on the problems with inductivism, and my entire conception of machine learning is just automated induction. Is that how wrong is that?
Hmm.
I don't know how wrong that is, but like,
Yeah, that seems right. I mean, there may be a few minor edge cases where something else might happen, like in the large language models, but I'd say like 99% of it is just brute force induction.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then the fact that they fail, and this, if you even like for example, one of the examples people use whenever I talk about this is like, oh, like this AI can play can play Pong, or not Pong, like Dota, or even more. I'm like, yeah, but you move that
Mhm.
thing, move the paddle a little bit, or you change the character. That thing can't, it couldn't get out of a box. Like it doesn't make it.
Yeah.
It doesn't can't it can't generalize that like that.
Yeah. Well, I want to say a couple things actually about that. I wrote a paper in 2020 about the explainable AI, and
Yeah.
I gave a number of examples of how even really state of the art systems were very brittle,
Mm.
like the Atari deep reinforcement learning system from DeepMind. That was actually a very brittle system that would just break if you changed the paddle or anything
Right. Yeah.
on the display. But actually, I think that these large language models, because and like GPT-4, because they're trained on so much data, they actually are not quite as brittle.
Mm.
And I think we have to acknowledge that. But at the same time, like they aren't fundamentally different. So I think it's people people feel like that it's a big like change, and now we're like we've got AGI,
Yeah.
but
I
it's
don't
really
know.
just the
Yeah.
same. It's the same sort of induction approach where you're mostly just interpolating between data that you saw and that the model saw in the training data set. And
First,
also
like, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry. Go ahead.
but
Go.
there
Go ahead.
are some, I have to say, like there are some things where it can generalize. So in particular there's the grokking,
Mm-hmm.
where a large language model could actually learn a general algorithm. So for instance, like addition,
Right.
or especially like addition modulo some number, or multiplication modulo some number. Like it can actually learn how to do that exactly. So therefore, it can generalize to any
Oh,
number,
interesting.
any inputs. Yeah, but and so people have gotten really excited about the grokking phenomenon, because then they think that it's learning general rules now, um, and that's true. But if you look at it more carefully, it's very limited. So it's not, these models haven't learned, for instance, multiplication um, or division. They've just learned
Right.
simpler arithmetical operations, and I think I theorize that the grokking is pretty limited by the architecture. Um, so,
Yeah. Actually, I
I,
also read a
yeah,
paper recently. Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I
Paper.
think we have to acknowledge that that is a thing,
Yeah.
and so it it is a case where it's learning a general algorithm.
So when people say AGI, like I've tried to uh, zero in on a definition of this, but it seems to be quite elusive. Uh, what do you have in mind when you say AGI? Like what? Like I have a very specific definition.
Hmm.
I think for me, AGI. This is like actually something one of my friends, like I didn't think about it until one of my friends told me. An AGI is a machine that can generate new knowledge, as far as
Hmm.
he's concerned. And I was like, oh, that's actually pretty interesting. What do you think? Like, do you have like a like? I read your post about the
Yeah.
whole Davos thing. That was pretty funny.
Um. Well, the what
the
thing?
the the what's it the moonshot, the AGI moonshot
Oh
post.
yes, yes, that
That
was
was
in
hilarious.
Davos, Switzerland,
That was
in
amazing.
2018. Yeah. So I don't think there can be any system that is like the ultimate learning algorithm that just is like the best at everything.
Yeah.
Um, because there's this thing called the no free lunch theorem, right? But um, AGI
You
for
want to explain
me,
what
I
that
can
is?
tell you just for me, yeah,
Yeah.
for me it just means being able to succeed and do perform well on a large number of tasks at at a human level or higher. So I don't really like try to make a very specific definition. I just think that's sort of the general definition that a lot of people use.
Yeah.
Um, and so that seems like a reasonable definition.
What about
I
like?
know
Do you
some,
think?
yeah, some people they try to uh, I also I also like Francois Chalet's definition of intelligence, which is like the ability to um, how does he say it? It's the ability to um, adapt to new environments or uh, he has a particular way of
Do
phrasing
you want me
it.
to look it
Like,
up? I can look it up. What's this?
yeah, if you look at
Yeah. What's it called?
his paper, The Measure of Intelligence, it's like
Measure of
the
intelligence.
it's like skill. I remember now. It's skill acquisition efficiency. So what he means by that is the way you measure intelligence is the how quickly you can adapt to new problem domains, basically.
Hmm.
And so I think a general intelligence or AGI, it can adapt to new problems that it's never seen before or new problem settings. Now, like I said, it can't go too far because there's no free lunch theorem.
Yeah.
But
Could you like,
yeah,
explain that what that is?
well, I'm not really an expert on that, but that's something that Francois Chalet talks about, and it basically says that um, there was this theorem proved by this guy. I think his name was like David Wolpert, and it basically said that if you consider all possible problems that you could um, define algorithmically, like um, there's no if you take any algorithm and you test it on all of the different problems, uh, they all get around the same. Um, they're all like they all
Oh,
do
I have heard about
equally
this.
poor once you
Yeah. I've heard
test
about
on
this.
everything. So like
Yeah.
you could, yeah. So basically, there's no single master algorithm that can just solve everything,
Right.
and that's kind of intuitive, right?
Yeah.
Like,
But
um,
how? So like I'm sure the
yeah,
first thing people did when some I mean not first thing but like someone out there probably when GPT came out was like trying to get them to can you come up with a novel theory that'll help us answer like gravity and resolve gravity and like quantum mechanics and but
yeah,
but like
yeah,
that's that so why isn't it so I tried this okay and it kept giving me
yeah.
the same stuff about quantum gravity and like all these other things
Mm,
but
hmm.
what I wanted was something new, like a new piece of a
Right.
new knowledge. For me, that's I feel like that's really important as far
Yeah.
as I'm
Well,
concerned.
that's hard for that's kind of what Francois Chalet is getting at is the ability to solve new problems that are pretty different from things you've solved before, and then the other way of stating it is like create having creativity
Yeah.
um,
Do you
might
think
be
do you think we
because
have creativity?
it's not really clear how humans come up with new theories
Yeah, exactly. So I
like
have a
the
couple of
theory of
questions.
gravity.
So couple of
It could
questions.
just be random, like poking around in the dark,
Yeah.
um, or it could be something that's more, more of a logical process. I don't think we really know,
So
but
couple of questions. So how like so this is a good segue into something that I want to talk about. So how important do you think it is for us to understand how we do these things? How the human brain is creative, how it
mhm.
comes up with new ideas, how it seemingly generalizes across distributions. Like,
I think
that's pretty important.
I think it's essential because um, essentially uh, I think that the um, if we're going to get AGI or improve AI beyond the current paradigm, it's probably helpful to look at the brain. So that's one because
the one
humans
the one
obviously can
the one
solve.
existence proof we have, we should probably
Mhm.
understand how that works.
Exactly. And then the other thing is, um, I think you need to have good epistemology or
Theories of knowledge.
understanding like how knowledge is generated and
Yeah.
but that's a little bit separate from how the brain works, because the way the brain works, it may not always be the best from an epistemological point of view, or there's if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Yeah.
Like this is good. Like also like, the title of your blog, more is different. Actually read the
Mhm.
paper that you got, that you used use as a title, because like I spent a whole month trying to, like, because I did my thesis on using complex systems analysis on video games, on coordination in video games, like the implicit
Mhm.
coordination that happens inside of video games, like playing multiplayer games. And I spent the whole month, like last month, just like reading some of the seminal papers in this. So you spend a lot of time in physics, right? Like you understanding the physical world.
Mhm.
Like, what is there in the laws of quantum mechanics that gives you any hint about how intelligence shows up? Like, this is. See, I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, I'm putting
there's
you on the spot.
nothing really.
I'm just asking in general because it's very
I don't think there's
interesting.
anything
Yeah.
really in because like you can't like it's hard to even go from quantum mechanics to something like the basic properties of a material. Like we don't even know like how to calculate like whether a material is going to be superconducting, or whether it will say strength material, for instance. It's very hard to actually even just figure that out. So then going another level, or like so then going another level to predicting how biological systems would function just based on quantum mechanics from first principles, I think that would be extremely difficult. So that's why we have higher level theories like chemistry, and then models of like how neurons work and stuff. So yeah,
What is
that's
the
the whole point of
what is
that
the appropriate?
paper.
Yeah, exactly. What?
More is different. The whole point
Yeah,
of that
yeah,
paper was that there's multiple
exactly.
levels of science,
Yeah, and that
like different
they
skills and
all
different.
should be considered like a fundamental, like like not
They're
fundamental,
all
but
yeah.
like they're all like at their own level they provide theoretical explanations.
They're all they should. He was kind of pushing against the idea that some science areas of science are like better than others
Yeah,
because they're
yeah.
more fundamental. Yeah, yeah. There is a sense in which physics is more fundamental, but it doesn't mean that it's like better than chemistry or biology.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because just because you know physics doesn't mean all of a sudden you know all of chemistry and biology.
Yeah, isn't that
They're
weird?
each
That's
fundamental
weird,
in their
right?
own. Yeah,
That's I find that really weird.
yeah. It is kind of weird. I mean, it's the it's just the surprising idea of emergent complexity. It's always like very surprising.
Yeah, so
Um, yeah.
like when I tell someone like at the atomic scale, we are mostly made up of space, like empty space,
Mm.
and they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's mostly what that's that's mostly what you are." They're like, that's weird." Like no, like this
Yeah.
multi-scale this multi-scale organization is pretty
Hmm.
strange, and at each scale something qualitatively weird happens, and then we don't understand
Yeah.
what exactly happens at
And
that level.
I tend to think intelligence is occurring at kind of its high scale of where you have certain um, neurological or computer systems that
Yeah.
are processing information. But I guess it could happen at. I guess it could be It could be happening at um, smaller scales. But that's not the way it seems to have evolved is out of biology. So I don't know. I don't see. I just think empirically it's at the higher scales, but theoretically maybe you could have an intelligent system that um, worked using just electrons and photons or um, inside a atomic nucleus or who
Yeah.
knows.
Who
But
knows?
yeah, I
Okay.
don't know.
All right. So okay.
Anyway.
So yeah. So like on. So I'm just like I was just trying to read up on as much as possible about your work and what you've been up to, and like so
Mhm.
I don't waste this opportunity to talk to you. But so like on your blog is like one of your motivations is that you want to one of the motivating questions for you is how can we accelerate progress in science and technology. And
Mhm.
this is something, so like my friends and I, we're trying to we've sort of like we've been grappling with this problem of how can so given so we both so several of us, we've come to the conclusion that human beings the baseline is that human beings are valuable and good, and we should try to do what we can to make us flourish here and then beyond this planet and whatever else we needs to happen. um
Mhm.
it's weird to me. It's like, so I'm from like a I'm from a very small country. I'm from Sri Lanka originally, and like it's so weird because when I was growing up, we sort of got everything from the West, but with like a 5 to 10 year lag. So like
Mhm.
I'd be watching like fucking Baywatch and like Knight Rider and shit when it's like way later, like the new things have happened by the time I've seen it. Um, and weirdly, like one thing that I sort of was, I mean, maybe this sort of came up a little bit later, but this sort of, it feels like the socially acceptable position lately is to think of humanity as a problem and basically a virus that's just like eating up the rest of exist like the world and the universe, and then people think
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, we'll just multiply and then consume the universe and then like turn everything into garbage. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Like this seems ridiculous to me. And uh, I don't know. Like it seems like the prevailing sort of
Mm.
normative state right now, which is kind of sad.
Yeah. There's yeah, there's a general like consensus among a lot of intellectuals that the world it hasn't really been getting better, and if anything, it's getting worse over time due
That's
to
so
overpopulation,
for
climate
me. Like for
change.
me, from someone come from
Yeah.
like Sri Lanka, I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Uh-huh.
Like things have things like
Yeah.
that's like a preposterous claim because like that's not what my life experience has been like. Things have been getting better
Mhm.
at a ridiculous like my life compared to my grandparents' life is like not because I moved to the Netherlands, but like even compared like to my parents at home, it's just like a huge like step changes in our well-being and our like overall just. But anyway, sorry, you were going. I got. I
Yeah, no,
distracted.
yeah, that sounds right. I mean, um, but I think a lot of intellectuals. It sounds smart to say, oh, it's not we're not actually progressing because of X, Y, Z, and things were actually if you study history, things were actually have always been going up and down and blah blah. But there's an article I saw. I think it's called "Why Pessimism Sounds Smart." um, I don't remember the whole thing, but that's worth reading.
This is actually
But
interesting because
yeah.
yeah, I was telling one of my friends the other day
Hmm.
because like it seemed to me that like it doesn't take that much effort to be a pessimist or or be extra cautious or like be because that seems the I don't
Hmm.
know. I have this feeling that like you have to be a little more intelligent, not intelligent, but like you have to say some smarter things if you want to. And so, as far as I can tell, a human brain reacts to change as default as something scary, or like it has to. You have to sort of. It has to be sort of proven that this change is good. Like change by default, it's like okay, it's very conservative in that sense. Like this works, so let's keep it this way. And then anything that deviates from the norm, whether it's like good or bad, it's easy. The default setting feels like it's to be. Let's be cautious about this. It's kind of how like
Hmm.
new, like if you take an animal out of its normal environment, put it up somewhere new, first thing it does is freeze. Like okay, stop.
Yep. Yeah. Change is inherently scary for people.
But how did
I
we
think,
lose
but
lose? How did you
mhm.
think we
So
got to the place where we lost faith in ourselves and in our ability to make the technology that we need to like make this game better for everybody?
yeah, I'm not so I'm not really an expert in that, but I think that the world wars had a huge impact.
Right.
If you look at like the 1920s, or if you look at the late 1800s, um, there was a lot of optimism about science and technology.
Mm.
They had been just starting to implement electricity and electrify houses and put electric lights in and electric motors and all that. And there was a lot of optimism. But then I think a lot of that was shattered during the First World War.
Mm.
Um, and and then uh, basically um, uh, the Second World War, obviously, and kind of I think those had the major impact, and then people were um, looking at technology as sort of a double-edged sword and
Right.
that sort of thing. Um, so I think that has a lot to do with it. I think and then there was also the environmentalist movement in the 1960s, um, which kind of saw technology as like linked with big corporations and government.
Right.
So they were kind of very authoritative, authoritan, or authoritarian, or
Yeah. Yeah.
against you know big companies, big government, which I think is fine in some sense. But they saw technology as part of that,
Yeah.
so
That's
they
it.
became
Yeah. It's so
anti-technology,
weird. It's
even though the technology is not necessarily authoritarian.
yeah. No,
And
exactly.
then
No. No.
so I think those movements, like the environmental movement and um, some of the like postmodern movements and stuff that came out after World War II. I think those are very influential now still.
Right. Yeah, like it's so interesting. It's so weird because like from like for us from in Sri Lanka, like technology is like lifeblood. It's like we
Mm,
like once we started like learning and adopting working practices, like, and I mean technology in every sense, in terms of like actual physical technology to cognitive like ways of thinking like technology, like like hey, this is how we should
mhm,
do things, this is how we should structure things, this is how a business should run, this is how this is how we should do these things, like you know I think is also the idea, this whole I think David Deutsch also mentions this whole spaceship earth idea, right? where
uh-huh,
it's like where it's like the earth is this beautiful little bubble that's like perfect for human life, it takes good care of us, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like you have like I have been in nature. I have been around. I've spent like most of my family and like my great grandparents parents spend their most of their life trying to stop nature from killing them, right?
Hmm.
Like, and that's kind of our history, like our inheritance. And now it's like, oh no, I think I don't know, man. People need to get outside and like try to actually survive. It's pretty hard.
Yeah, especially with all the all the diseases um that we've had.
Yeah,
We've actually eradicated some of the worst ones.
yeah.
Like smallpox,
And
and we're on the road now to potentially eradicating malaria. So
it's
yeah,
amazing.
I
Like it's
agree
amazing.
100%.
And like, and I was telling somebody like the other day, I'm like, you know, if you just we have a forest next to our campus, beautiful forest. It's awesome. Like it's great to walk in. It's fantastic. But I was like, there's almost nothing in there for you. I was like, look, there's almost nothing in here that's edible for you. Like you can't
Mm,
just eat these plants. Like the plants you find in the grocery store are very specific plants. Like you can't just wander into the
uh-huh.
woods and expect to survive. That's just not how it works, right? And
Yeah.
but
Um,
and
yeah.
our technology enables all these things to happen, right? So what do you
Mhm.
think? Like so actually, how like do you still like keep up with like physics, or like are you done with that entirely? Like are you just
Honestly, not really. I left physics in 2016 and haven't really done much stuff related to physics since then. Occasionally, I learn about some of the new medical scanning technologies and stuff like that, which
right?
involves a little bit, but not really. And um, yeah,
Like
yeah,
so
it's
in
it's
terms
it's a
of
little bit sad, but
yeah, no, it's okay.
um,
I was just
yeah,
curious because
I'm really my expertise is really more in AI now.
yeah, I'm just curious because like I was just wondering like what fundamental things in physics, like what
Mm.
fundamental like new problems need to be solved in physics that could like unlock like stuff for us, like energy in terms of like as far as I can tell.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Honestly, I'm more excited about engineering,
yeah.
and um,
So you think
yeah,
there's lot left to be done with the laws we know already of how to work with.
yeah, like creating fusion energy.
Yeah,
Um, that would lower the cost of a lot of things, like creating clean drinking water,
yeah,
desalination, um, transport of goods, even construction. Like we could probably construct tunnels and bridges and stuff a lot cheaper with cheaper energy.
yeah.
If we had a lot cheaper, like we had basically had free electricity, unlimited energy.
Yeah.
So I think fusion would be huge. I think that is totally possible. It's just an engineering
What about
problem,
like so? I mean,
um,
yeah. Like I read like
basically.
I think it was last year where like was like sometime mid last year where they did the first fusion thing, and I mean it's very far from making it commercial, obviously. But like,
Yeah.
what about fission? Like it's still like you don't think that path's viable?
Um, well, yeah. As far as fusion, there was the laser
Yeah,
test. I forget what was that called.
the Department of
Um,
Energy did something, right? Like they did something with the I can't remember. I just vaguely
yeah,
remember reading about
it's
this.
like I think it's called ballistic fusion. It was at the National Ignition Facility, but that was a little bit overhyped because it's not really scalable, and they had to put way more energy in than
Then
what
they
they
got
got
out.
out.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's a lot of fusion startups now. There's one in
What
particular
really?
called oh yeah, in the United States there's a number. There's one called Helion, which Sam Altman has invested in,
Of course.
and and there's another one called Tri Alpha Energy that has been going a while. So
Damn.
yeah, there's a lot of the fusion there's a lot of things happening. It's probably still like 10 years away, but
What
that
what
would be
what
huge.
what are the pros of fusion as opposed to traditional fission based nuclear energy?
Um, well, it's way cheaper. So
Really?
Fission is, oh yeah. Wait,
What?
in theory, yeah. Fission,
Oh,
people think that fission or is like cheap because you don't need a whole lot of uranium,
yeah.
right? It doesn't require a lot of fuel, um, but it's actually quite expensive to build the plants because of all the safety regulations, and then it's very expensive to process the spent fuel
Right.
and figure out how to dispose of it. So when you do all the numbers, like it's it's not cheaper than like wind or hydro. The wind
Oh,
and
okay.
hydro are the wind power, hydropower are the cheapest. Nuclear, I don't is actually um, if I remember correctly, it's around the same as maybe solar or maybe even a little more.
Oh,
So
really? Okay.
yeah, but it could be in theory it could be a lot cheaper, um, especially um, if we uh, if we utilize some of the byproducts. Like there's this idea of a breeder reactor that would actually um, uh, recycle some of the fuel. So
Oh, nice.
the uranium gets turned into like plutonium and then a lot of other elements, right? And so in a breeder reactor, like that would get reused
So,
essentially.
so
So
fusion is inherently safe, right? Like, and because the runaway
mhm.
can't happen, it just sort of just like stops working if something goes wrong,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. So it's. I mean, I think fission is super safe too.
Yeah.
I think the main argument for fusion is it's just it's really cheap because basically all you need to put in is like hydrogen or deuterium or maybe tritium, um, and yeah,
Yeah, that would be amazing. Like,
and
honestly,
and
like I
and
am
and
like,
there's no like you don't have to process the waste or anything like that. So
yeah. I mean, but like as a let's say a stopgap between, let's say, look, we don't want to keep burning coal, right? Like, this is obviously a bad
mhm.
idea, right? Like,
Yeah.
like you know, I'm not, for example, I'm not like a okay, for example, okay, so while people were so people in like people in Africa, or even like parts of India and like parts of the poor countries where I'm parts of the poor, like even like the really poor people from where I'm from, like we're just trying to go from burning freaking burning cow manure in little things in our living room, so that to go from that to get from to go from that to like natural gas, right? So that we can
Hmm.
actually breathe in our houses, and like we're not burning like
Hmm.
fire out of this thing. And you know, while people were like people were also advocating, oh, we should help poor people like get money, rich and all this stuff. They were also
Hmm.
protesting against like donations that would help people in Africa actually get natural gas instead of like burning shit in their living room and getting cancer, right? So
Hmm.
I'm not saying this. I'm not uh, just from a purely from like a you know a carbon balance perspective. Like, yeah, we shouldn't be pumping carbon into the atmosphere that was already in stored underground, right? That's a
Right.
bad idea. Like, but as a stopgap, I feel like fission should have been the like we should have like really been like, yo, like this is clearly makes more sense. But
Uh-huh.
that didn't happen, which is kind of sad. I mean, obviously, because the whole nuclear,
Hmm.
we really didn't come into nuclear the best possible way, you know, like we came in first with explosions outside, then you're like, yeah, let's why don't we build a power plant out of this?
Yeah, that's um yeah, that's kind of, I mean, technically the fission pile came first, but yeah, the what happened was what the public saw was the nuclear
Yeah, exactly.
weapons
The
and then the
what the
nuclear
public saw
power,
first. Yeah, what the
and
public
so
saw
the two
first.
got conflated, especially by the environmentalists,
Yeah.
um, who and even to this day, there's a widespread misconception of like, at least like 10 years ago, there was a survey that showed like 70% of people thought that a nuclear power plant could explode like a nuclear bomb,
That's
which
which
isn't
is
true.
which is
So
yeah,
there's a
exactly. It's not
widespread
true.
like fear of nuclear power, partly
Yeah.
because of conflation with the nuclear weapons. So that's always been an issue. Um, there's also like, but I think you bring up an interesting point of why don't we encourage developing nations to use nuclear? Um, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The only thing is we have to figure out how to make it a little bit cheaper. I think there's
The last I checked, India and
if you look
China
at
are
like so if
sorry.
you look at like the United States Navy does not have the same regulations as the nuclear power industry. So like when they put a nuclear reactor in a submarine, they don't have to follow the same regulations as a nuclear power plant. And so those modular reactors are way cheaper.
Oh,
They're like
okay.
several $1 million for a reactor that will power a submarine. So I think that and they've never had an accident with one of those. So I think that shows that nuclear power could be a lot cheaper in
Right,
principle.
right.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And this unnecessary fear drives the cost because it makes regulations much more stringent, much more cost prohibitive.
Yep.
But that being said,
Exactly.
like countries like India and China seem to have no problem with any of this. They're like, let's just go build some. So there are quite a few plants coming up, and then I checked recently.
Oh,
Um,
that's great. Yeah.
which I'm like, fine.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like what really pisses me off is like, so like, um, it's like, okay, so let me get this straight. The Western countries, you guys can use coal and oil for the past 200, 300 years, get rich as fuck. And then we want to do the same thing. And you're like, nah, you know what? You probably shouldn't. I'm like, okay, fine, then give us an alternative. Let us,
Yeah.
we have to, let us catch up, the best thing we can do, like if you want people to care about the environment, the best thing you can do is to get them rich. Like, get,
Hmm.
like, my like common sight for me when I was back home looking out my window is like trash fire, trash fire, trash fire, trash fire, trash fire. Like,
Mm.
this is not good. We
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
we
Wow.
need to
Well.
solve this problem.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. No,
it's what it
I
is.
mean, I agree
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
But but I'm hopeful. Like, I think human beings are capable, and I think we will, like, like, I get some flack for being a, what's it called, a tech, someone's, what's the word, tech no, not a tech bro,
Optimist.
but like a
Uh,
there's a word for this, like,
the
someone who's
word
like
the word
someone
I
who's
use is
yeah.
techno optimist, but
Yeah, someone who's
you might be
overly,
thinking.
confident in technology's ability to solve problems. I'm like, dude, but the thing is,
Uh,
that's all we've ever had. Like, that's how we've solved
uh,
all of our problems. Like, I don't understand what you're talking about.
Pretty
Anyway,
much. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's been problems from like religious ideology as
yeah,
well, or
yeah,
things like
yeah,
that we've had to overcome.
yeah.
But as far as like our physical needs, and uh, health and stuff, it's all been technology.
All right, let's talk about
Absolutely.
AI. Right?
Okay. Yeah. But I think that's what people probably want to hear the most about is AI.
No, this is
Yeah.
this show is nothing about people. It's all about me. It's all about
Okay. All right.
it's all
Okay.
about what I want to hear about. Okay,
Hmm.
but so, like, one of the things I want to talk to you about is the hype in, especially in healthcare. What is your, like, so you've been working in healthcare for a while in AI, and I know one of my friends who's actually like is like involved in AI. He's trying, like, he was trying really hard to get AI going, like get a AI startup, the AI aspect of his startup going, but like now he's just like standard operational optimization, and like, just like nothing really crazy. So I'm curious, what has your journey been like in this AI healthcare space?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I got into it around 2020 or 2019, and it was definitely overhyped at that time.
Mm.
We had Geoffrey Hinton saying like radiologists were going to be replaced in a couple
Yeah.
years, and
Yeah, he's making
it
some
was pretty clear.
outlandish claims. Like
Yeah,
even in right now, like with AGI and stuff. I'm like, damn, bro, chill. I'm more of a
mm-hmm.
Lee Kun, uh,
Jan LeCun. Yeah,
Jan LeCun fan myself. But anyway, sorry.
yeah. Yeah. It's so yeah. I think it's generally been overhyped. On the other hand, I do think we need to worry about the long-term existential risk.
Mm.
So I agree with Geoffrey Hinton in that regard.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, but yeah, it's been very overhyped in the sense that the deep learning models, um, they're not really robust. It's really hard to train right now on a lot of medical imaging data from multiple different hospitals, um, because it's hard to uh, get hospitals to release their data sets,
Right.
and also a lot of times the imaging data needs to be labeled, um, and
It's
in order to
expensive.
label it well, you need to have a lot of medical expertise, and so you really need doctors to label it, and that's time consuming.
And
But
boring. I imagine.
yeah,
Like, imagine paying. Like, are you
yeah.
kidding me?
Fortunately,
Like, dude, if I went to
yep,
fucking medical school for what 6 years and then like I practiced for another 10 years
yeah,
and someone's like, hey, I want to sit in a room and label 8,000 photos, I'll be like, fuck you, man.
yeah. That's what I mean. That's kind of what we had to do at NIH when we were developing deep learning models. Was we needed radiologists to literally label the images and also like segment structures like kidney stones, or they had to literally like do pixel annotations,
Right.
and it's actually crazy how much time they spend on that. Um, Fortunately now, there are foundation models for segmentation and label that can make it much faster, and so like we have access to a model from Facebook slash Meta. It's called Segment Anything, and that can basically it can be used to segment any kind of structure in a medical image
Oh, nice. Yeah, like, yeah,
much
because
faster. Yeah, so like so things have advanced quite a bit just in the last 2 years or so, so that it's not quite so overhyped, but it's still overhyped.
yeah.
If that makes
So
sense. Like
what
with
is
a
it?
GPT-4 and a
Yeah,
lot.
what is
Yeah.
it good at right now?
Mhm.
Like, what are some domains in healthcare
Mhm.
that are having legit
Where it's being
um,
used.
being used? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what. So the reason I started my current job was I wanted to see how AI is actually being used,
Right.
and actually like talk to radiologists and doctors and see like how they're using it. And so that's why I've been able to see that. And I was surprised like how little it's actually being used. And in reality, like most hospitals are not using AI at all. Where I work, we're using it for a few things. I'm not sure I can say exactly, but
Yeah.
a lot of hospitals are just using it, for instance, for triage,
Right.
especially in the emergency room. Like there's an AI model that can identify like brain hemorrhages fairly accurately, and so that's useful for identifying those cases really fast. So then they get priority and like emergency treatment really fast. Otherwise, there might be like a 12 to 24-hour wait before a radiologist will look at
Right.
the scan. So that's probably the biggest use case. Um,
So it's mostly computer
and
vision based stuff.
yeah, the biggest use cases are all in radiology, mainly for triage of urgent care cases, identifying them fast. Um, I'm not really aware of any applications in like other areas. I mean, in theory, AI could be very useful for pathology, like identifying different types of cancers in microscope images. But unfortunately, like a lot of hospitals, they haven't even digitized their pathology, so
Yeah.
they use like old fashioned
Yeah.
light microscopes, and they don't actually have digital images. So yeah, there's a long way to go.
Right.
And it's people don't realize like how long it takes to actually deploy something into a hospital.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it
Building stuff is
takes
hard.
years.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, yeah, but there's yeah, I think it's there's a lot of promise to like foundation models now, but um, it will take several years at least
Right. So you
to
also wrote
integrate.
about the COVID AI hype that happened. What did you learn?
Uh,
What did
I
you learn
wrote
looking into
about
this?
what I wrote about was how there was a lot of papers on AI for detecting COVID.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah.
Yes, because what happened was there was a lot of extra funding that went in that was given out for COVID projects, and so all the AI
All
researchers
right.
um, pivoted their research to something COVID related, but the quality of a lot of that research was really low. So, for instance, there were tons of papers on like detecting COVID in CT scans or X-rays, and the quality of the work was really low.
Right.
And also, there's not much value to that sort of thing because COVID can be detected very easily with a test, like a PCR test.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was never really any like there's never any real point, right? So I wrote about that. It's just
Yeah.
and it's the reason I wrote about that was that it's just an example of how we're not doing science funding very like strategically, and a lot of money is being wasted just in general on low quality biomedical research.
Right.
So that's what I was writing about.
Right. Right. Right.
But yeah, yeah,
And what?
the general AI for COVID that was kind of overhyped. I don't think there was any AI that actually was useful during
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah. Interesting.
Really.
Like, because I know quite a few people who want to, like, because I know people who are like studying AI, studying like machine learning and all these things, and they want to help people. Like they want to use their skills to
Mm-hmm.
help people, and the first thing they think about is like, hey, can I do some stuff in healthcare? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, it might, because I know some people who actually do this, and I'm like, this is kind of bit of a it's hard. It's a bit of a mess than you think. Like it's not that straightforward, especially in the medical domain.
Mm-hmm.
And do you feel like the medical domain is generally a little bit slow to like to try anything of like new technology and stuff like that, or is it just this one thing?
Uh, yeah, um, I'm not sort of, but if there is a technology that's actually improves patient care, um, it will be adopted. Um, uh, One of the big issues is just funding because our healthcare system is already like super expensive, and
Yeah.
um, so everything has to be covered. Everything is paid through insurance companies for the most part. So um, they if a hospital wants to bring in a new technology, um, or generally they need the insurance companies to pay for that,
Right. Right.
the
Right.
use of that
That's
technology.
crazy. Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
unless it's a
okay, okay.
technology where it's like saving them a lot of money. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's a big issue is just how like figuring out how to pay for things. Um, but yeah, if something like all the doctors and radiologists I've met, they tend to be pretty excited about technology and very interested in it, especially radiologists. Um, Radiologists have um, I think they spend all day like just on the computer, so they tend to be a little bit nerdier and more into like computer stuff, and so they recognize a lot of the stuff they do could be automated.
Right.
So radiologists have always kind of been really interested in AI, and all the ones I work with are very excited about AI. And I feel like a lot of doctors are excited about AI and technology too,
Right.
but
Right. Right.
it has to clearly benefit the patient in
Yeah.
order for, which honestly, a lot of stuff in academia doesn't really have
Yeah.
much benefit.
Yeah. So okay. So this is another thing I've been grappling with quite a bit. Like just this, like, because I I believe in the idea of academia. Okay, I believe
Hmm.
in and like I really enjoy being in academia. Like this is like me coming back to academia for the second time after being in industry for like 5 years. Right, I did my first degree in the U.S. I went back to Sri Lanka. I worked for a while, a bunch of different companies. Then I was like, man, I want to go back to school, learn some more fundamental things from the beginning. And I enjoy the process of learning. I enjoy being in school, and I enjoy the environment. Enjoy doing research. But the incentive structure is it
Yeah.
makes no sense to me. Like this, like make the number go up. Like just push papers out
Hmm.
that for the sake of putting papers out. I'm like, what the hell? That's not what I. That's not that seems. Ooh,
Yeah.
that seems gross.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah. And that's a issue that I ran into as well. Which is that there's pressure to just publish lots of papers.
Yeah.
And
What do you say? Like whenever a metric becomes a target, it ceases to be a good metric.
yeah, that's the um, what's it called? The law. Yeah, yeah. Uh,
It immediately stops being a because
Goodhart's law.
yeah,
Goodhart's law.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
that's what's
And
happening. I feel like.
yeah. Yeah. That we don't have like granting agencies. They kind of just look at paper output and what journals you published in. They don't necessarily evaluate broader impacts, and that's a big problem. And then another problem is just that um, we're we're not like investing in large scale clinical trials
Right.
for things.
You mean long term, the things that take
So
a long time,
just
or like
large ones. So like for instance, in brain imaging, a lot of the trials for new diagnosis techniques or other things, they're way too small. They only have like 20 people in them, which
right, right,
so the data is really
yeah,
noisy
yeah,
and yeah, and it and so it's hard to get good um, statistics basically.
yeah. What about
Yeah.
okay? So what about AI in terms of like molecular design and like
Mm.
medicine, genomic stuff? What's the potential?
I don't really know much. So I don't know much about genomics. As far as like AI for drug discovery, I I wrote a paper about that, but it's kind of it's probably outdated now because I wrote it in like 2018.
Yeah,
But at that time, like the state of the art was like reinforcement learning. Um,
right.
but what people don't realize is like like molecules are very finicky in the sense that like changing like one or two atoms can change the way it interacts with the body like
Right.
dramatically.
Yeah.
And so it's not like a simple like if you're optimizing a molecular structure to bind to a certain target in the body, it's not like a simple optimization problem where you have a smooth surface.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
Then you just yeah.
it's like if you change it one atom, it can change everything dramatically. So it's like that makes it challenging. And also so there's kind of been like two approaches or three approaches. Like one is like physics-based simulation, one is like a heuristic approach, and then one is like a machine learning AI approach, and they all are. I mean, when I looked at it in 2018, they're all like still viable approaches.
Right.
It wasn't like the AI was um,
So
clearly better.
what is like the general, like without a, like, so what is the traditional journey like to develop a medicine? It's long, right? It's long and expensive. It takes billions of dollars. Like I heard.
Hmm. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is the like? What is the what is the what is the most like the most expensive part of all that? Like, is it like the actual discovery of the
I think
thing,
the
or
the most expensive is probably the clinical trials,
right, right, okay,
especially the phase 3
right,
trial, which
right,
um, where you actually have to find patients that fit um, the criteria and administer the trial. That's probably the most expensive. Uh, and so when you get to that stage, you want to make sure that it's very likely to work at
right,
that
right, right,
stage. Yeah.
right.
Um, so, but it's yeah. Um, there's this phenomenon where the cost of getting a drug to market has been like going up exponentially.
Really?
They call
Yeah,
that
that sucks.
Errorum's law. Yeah, Errorum's law. Um,
That sucks.
I'm not. Yeah, I've been. That's kind of interesting. I've been meaning to look into that. Um, some people say it's due to um, like stricter regulations, but um, I don't I don't think that's the main reason. I think it may be just that we've we found like the low hanging fruit. So like most drug discovery so far has been just modifying existing things. Like if
Right.
like you have a drug that like you know like in psychiatry, a lot of the drugs are just modifications of existing drugs.
Right.
And so over time we've been picking all the low hanging fruit and all the easy things that can be done, and now we're
Right.
getting
Right.
to the point where it's
We had actually think about it.
harder, much harder things. We need to make progress. We need to do harder things. So I think
Right.
that probably explains a lot, but also the regulations. Uh, I mean, it's definitely got a lot stricter in 1962 or 1963, and then um, in the 1990s or early 2000s, there was some issues with statins, I think, and the FDA got a lot stricter then. So
Right.
yeah, that's a big part too.
And okay, so about AI and like people like Sam Altman have been to Congress saying we should you know put clamps on this, like get everyone and get everyone stop doing so much research, and then people are saying he wants to just it'll just lead to regulatory capture, and he just wants to have like the whole pie for himself, or like Microsoft or whatever the hell it is.
Mm.
um in 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 the view of accelerating humanity, like what do you think are like some good leverage points, like high leverage points that like could that could be affected, that would have the biggest impact in terms of getting us past some of these big humps that are looming.
Yeah, like the existential risk concerns.
Yeah, and like
um,
and just like
mhm.
how can we push humanity forward, like in terms of like what domains do you think, especially AI, like I mean, just generally, what are you thinking about, like in terms of what's
Hmm.
possible, what's excited you, and like what's exciting you in the future, like coming up in the future.
Hmm. Well, I mean, obviously, I think foundation models are exciting as an augment to help humans be more efficient at their
Right.
jobs and things like that. Um, uh, having household robots
Yeah.
that can do different tasks, That would be huge. I
And
don't think we need to build like a godlike AGI.
yeah,
I think we should not do that. I think that that's dangerous. I think we should be focused on um, slightly more narrow
mm,
systems that they can still do a lot of different tasks, but they're not like um, they're not like true. They're not like AGI that's doing trying to be creative um, uh, and or like following a certain goal. Another dangerous thing is like following a certain goal, like just trying to optimize a single goal. Eliezer Yudkowsky has talked a lot about
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
how
yeah,
just
yeah.
having an agent that optimizes a particular reward function is really dangerous. So I think we should not not just focus on that sort of AI, but have more general tool AI, like
Right,
like GPT-4. It's not an agent. It's not it. I mean, you can think of it like it's trying to predict the next word, but it's not. It doesn't have any like reward. Um, that's really just during training. It's trying
right,
to improve itself. It's not like trying to get better and better or pursue some sort of goal.
right,
And so I think that's the kind of AI that's dangerous.
right.
Um, and I think we should be super careful with that sort of AI. Um, but I don't want to like over regulate AI or stop developing AI, because I think you can have like other AI that's just a useful tool. I also like robots, household robots. Um, they can just like mimic human tasks.
I agree.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that's kind of what I'm excited about.
What about the connectomics project, like the direction people trying to model the human brain? Do you think that's going to lead us somewhere?
Yeah, that's something I've been interested in mostly several years ago. I'm trying to get more into it now, but the um there's in theory you could have emulation of a human brain, and then that could um essentially be used for different tasks.
Wouldn't
Like
that be crazy?
it's a complicated subject because
Yeah, yeah.
we
Like
don't know if they're
imagine.
going to be conscious or not,
Yeah, exactly.
and yeah, there's a lot of unknowns about that.
that would
But
that'd be pretty nuts. Like if
mhm.
that's all it took, like that would be pretty nuts. Like if all it took was just like a perfect replication of a digital replication, and then we just like and we just like like pinged it with that first neuron pulse, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, this thing's alive. Like I don't know. That would be pretty. That would be. I feel like that'd be pretty ridiculous if that happened. I feel like there might be some other sauce that might be required to make that happen, but who knows? I think it's worth finding out though.
And I think it's there's a guy I'm kind of friends with named Logan Collins.
Yeah.
Logan, his middle name's Thrasher, so Logan Thrasher Collins. It's kind of a cool name.
Yeah.
But he's been a proponent of doing connectomics to simulate insect brains, like flies and maybe other insects. And he has a paper about that. And then more recently, he's written about how by combining existing technologies, we could map the entire brain at like 80 nanometer or 60 nanometer resolution, which would be enough to map all the synapses and most of the dendrites and things.
Yeah.
So it mapping the entire human brain, it's more feasible than you might think. It could be done theoretically. It could be done in about a year at a cost of several $1 million right now, according to Logan Collins' calculations. So
That's
actually,
not that bad. Yeah.
the Foresight Institute, which is an organization I'm kind of affiliated with, they actually have a workshop coming up on that topic, and I think it's quite exciting. Again, there's a lot of open questions about whether the simulated brain would be simulated at enough detail, and that's really an open question right now. And then there's the question of whether it would be conscious or not. But I think it's definitely worth investing in. I mean, we're hardly investing any money into it right now, but I think we should be researching that a lot more. At the very least, you could preserve people's brains and then have like a realistic kind of
Yeah.
simulation of that person.
I'm just about to get done reading a Neuromancer. Like just on
Yeah,
just on the last couple pages now. It like
they have that in Neuromancer. They have the what are they called, artilects or
they're like construct like
artifacts?
the flatline
Yeah,
constructs. Yeah. So
constructs where.
yeah,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
So like it's funny. Like in that book, like there are a couple of times I had to like flip forward to the front page to just to make sure when this book was published. I'm like, holy shit, 1984. Like that's a pretty this is pretty good.
Yeah, and that book was way ahead of its time.
Yeah. It was pretty
That
good.
book was probably one of the most fresh and sci-fi
Unbelievable.
books
Like
ever.
like some of those like so like like there's one part where he's asking, so there's this construct of a hacker that's stored in like basically a model of the hacker's brain, like that they steal and this guy can talk to, and then he asks the construct like, hey, are you conscious? And then he basically describes himself as a language model, and I'm like, damn, that's
Huh.
pretty interesting. I was like, this guy knew what's up. I was like, yeah, pretty cool.
I'll have to look at that. Yeah, that I read that book like in like 2006 or something.
Yeah, I'm
so
just
it's
getting
been a
into this
while,
now.
but
Yeah, I'm just getting into
yeah,
this now.
that was one of my favorite books. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm not gonna take up much more of your time, and I want to thank you a lot. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for like sitting down and talking to me. Yeah, like, do you have any advice for like people who are like in academia or like young or like people like because who want to like I know a couple of friends, quite a few of my friends who are like in school right now with me as well, and trying to think like, okay, like what can I do to have some impact, and I don't want to just be like publishing papers for no good reason. Like, any advice for someone who's
Well, I mean, I think my advice for young people like in their 20s would be, for most people, I feel like the advice I would give would be to go try to join a startup. Because that's where a lot of really genuinely new things happen a lot. When you get into big organizations, it's much harder to make like new things happen really fast. So
Right.
startups seem to be where a lot of this stuff, a lot of the new breakthroughs occur. Like OpenAI, like Google had the transformer architecture, but they didn't
Right.
really develop it. Whereas a small startup like OpenAI was the one that developed it.
Right.
So I would encourage that. And the other thing is like when you get older and you get into your 30s, you start to like want to settle down more, and you become more tied down to a particular place and thing. So working in a startup becomes less attractive because there's a lot of risk in being in a startup. Most startups fail after like a year or two.
Right.
But I think in your 20s is like the best time to be involved in a startup.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would even encourage people to like consider founding their own startup or venture.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
I think
crazy.
that's
Like,
where you can have the biggest impact. Now, you can have impact in academia as well, but I think it's much harder, and you have to have you have to really get lucky also. I feel like, yeah, that would be my general advice, but it really depends on the person. Some people are not suited for startups.
Yeah.
Some people are more suited for academic work or communications type work or policy work, or so it really depends.
All right, cool. Thanks, man. Thank you so much.
I know that was pretty vague, but
no, it's okay. It's okay. It's all good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's hard to give general advice.
I know. That's the worst thing. The worst thing is general advice. Like the best, you want when you want advice, you want to have specific, targeted advice. That's the general advice is the worst.
But,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks a lot. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Yeah.
This has been a One Deeper podcast. Thanks for joining, and I hope you learned something. Catch you again next time.